Okay, we're in chapter 4. Today's study is dedicated to our brothers and sisters in Israel and IDF, U.S. Armed Forces. Please God that they should have complete success. That's all behind us. Purim is tomorrow night. I invite everybody to join us for the Purim festivities tomorrow night, as well as on Tuesday evening before sunset. We're going to be reading the Megillah and have dinner, an adult-only party. So come celebrate. It's always fun. All right, here we go. Chapter 4. So we started chapter 4 last week. We're going to start again because we only did one paragraph of it. Amnam havoida hamitis hibiyagia betfila bigias nefesh vigias basar. True service of prayer requires effort of the spirit and effort of the flesh. In other words, it's a soul experience and it's a body experience. What does it mean, effort of the flesh? It means to effort the mind, to toil with the mind, with in-depth contemplation and great connection, with a strong focus, bahamuskel, in the intellectual idea. So I want to kind of make this very real for us. Sometimes we study something and it's a nice idea. Ideas remain intellectual unless we really put great effort into comprehending the material. So especially in today's day where you can read the news, you can read an article, you can read an essay, and it stays in the mind. If you really want that intellectual idea to permeate, the first step is to really invest ourselves in truly comprehending the material. So that's the first thing. And he says, even though we live in a fast-paced era, the reality is the mind is still the mind. That hasn't changed much. And if we want to really comprehend the material, we have to invest time. Kishav v'yoser. He says like an hour or more. Laharchiv es ha'asaga, to expand on the intellectual idea. V'hizbainus, in contemplation. Beribi hapratim shabai, in the many details that are included in it, dafka. And to bring oneself close to the subject matter through well-known explanations, or in that which novel ideas that the person originates at the time. So the more one invests themselves in the intellectual idea, the more one invests themselves in comprehending the subject matter, the more it becomes personal. And the more it becomes novel, right? The more you invest yourself in something, the more ideas percolate, in the space of therapy. So a lot of people do self-therapy, which I don't have a problem with. But self-therapy is where you read about ideas of the human condition. And for some people, that's adequate if one really, really reads and studies and then contemplates and meditates. So these ideas become personal. sometimes we have our own blockages, so we don't, even when we read the material, we don't necessarily own it. I shared this yesterday that in the Purim story, Haman draws a lottery. The Medrash tells us that Haman knew that the Jewish people transcend the rational order of things, right? We see that once again. We are not a rational people. We're not subject to the rules of nature. So Haman realized that if he wants to eradicate the Jews, he's got to go above the rational order. So in order to determine what the day was going to be that he was going to annihilate the Jews, he threw a lottery. But the Medrash tells us that he drew the lottery, and the lottery came out. First, he went for the days of the week. He picked Sunday, and it says the angels came before God and said, Sunday's not a good day. Sunday is the day that God created the world, and the Torah tells us, Bereshis, the very first word of the Torah, Bereshis is two firsts, that God created the world for the Torah and for the Jewish people. So the angel said, if you're going to get rid of the Jewish people, then you got to shut down the world. The whole world was created for the Jewish people, so you got to shut it down. So they went to Monday, and the angels for Monday came before God and made their claim, and so on and so forth. So he said, okay, we got to take a different approach. So let's work on months. So he comes to the month of Nisan, and it says Nisan's not a good month because Nisan is the month that the Jewish people left Egypt. So they became a nation then, so they're too strong in the month of Nisan. So he went to Iyar, and every month he found that there was something about the month that was the Jewish people were going to overpower. Until finally he came to the month of Adar, the month that we're currently in, and he said, oh, this is a good month because Moses passed away in this month. So it's a good month. So the Medrash says that he didn't realize that Moses was also born in this month. So that counterbalances the fact that Moses died. What's going on here? Here's a guy who thinks that he's a rational person. So he's coming to a rational conclusion that he has to do something that's irrational, super rational. But then when the super rational actually presents itself, he says, okay, that doesn't really work. So we have to do something else. Right? We're all susceptible to that kind of nonsense. I shared this yesterday. When we were kids, maybe I didn't do this, but maybe some of you did it because we didn't date until we were dating for marriage, right? So you pull the petals off the flower. He loves me not. He loves me not. Right? What happens when it comes to the end of the flower and it lands on he loves me not? You say, oh, let me take another flower, right? What kind of game are you playing, right? So if you're in this mindset where you are essentially bribed to yourself. You're bribed from your own self-love. You can convince yourself of anything. So in order to truly have perspective, we have to invest time. We have to invest effort into really understanding the material until we can truly personalize it. So intellectual ideas, especially when we talk about God, it's very easy for us to say, this is an idea that's out there. It's not about me. Right? They're not talking about me. They're talking about something out there. So if we really want to personalize it, we have to invest ourselves, time and effort, and then eventually it can trickle down to become personal. This is not like one who's studying something. This is not about study. The study takes place before. This is it's a deep connection to the intellectual idea that is comprehended by the mind. The more one invests themselves in the energy of the intellectual idea, the more the details of the idea become manifest. More so than he did before the individual started studying the matter. I had mentioned this particular meditation that I listened to from this Rabbi Kirsch, and I shared the meditation with someone. Someone said, oh, yeah, that's a really nice meditation. I got this idea from it. I said, you got to listen to it again. And listen to it again, over and over again. This particular meditation is just mind-blowing. But every word in the meditation has real powerful messaging. But unless you're going to listen to it over and over and over again, you're not going to get the real messaging in it. And the more you listen to it, the more it becomes personal, the more you connect with all the details that are there.
So, how do you know that your interpretation is correct? It's not tilted by your own thought process.
So
is that plain? Is it or message is that plain and clear? It's not like being little.
no, so I think he references that point at the end of the first paragraph. He says, "Al pi ha'asberim hayuduim." First through well-known commentary, well-known ideas, explanations about the subject matter. Right now, the reality is that we are susceptible. We are susceptible to distorting what it is. But the reality is that the more we invest ourselves in something, the more we're able to be honest about it. Which is why two things. Number one, that's why sometimes real therapy with a therapist is helpful because you're not blinded by yourself. But the second thing is that when you are studying for the purpose of reflection, and you study with good teachers, and you study with a good friend, so they're gonna call you out. They're gonna keep you in check. But we are always susceptible, and there are a lot of specifics. Are you in this meditation, when you personalize it, are you giving yourself a pass, or are you really looking in a mirror? And you may initially say, okay, I'm giving myself a pass, but the more you contemplate it, the more difficult it is to deny what it is. We know in our essence the truth about ourselves. We know that, but we constantly are putting up walls because we don't want to face that. So the more we invest ourselves in an idea, the more difficult it becomes to fool ourselves about something, and we separate ourselves, the true self, from what it is that we're studying. So it's a lot of work. This is what he says. It's the toil of the mind and the toil of the soul and the toil of the flesh. And then and then new ideas. Again, let's put it in context. Why is the person doing this meditation in the first place? Because they want to get an honest assessment of self. They're not just looking to give themselves a pass. So the more one invests themselves deeply in the intellectual idea, the more new ideas come up in a manner to apply the subject matter to the self. And every detail that's within the idea, and in general, the whole idea, will be even more in depth. So we're talking about something very powerful. We're talking about godly ideas, right? So because they're godly ideas, the more we connect, when we study an idea, okay, got to slow down. We have many layers. And just in a general sense, we have body and soul. Within the body itself, we have emotions, we have intellect, and all of these layers are going to, the divine job that these layers have is to hide on the soul. That's their job. That's the way God created us. Because the more we can push through the layers, the more we get to the essence. So because the subject matter is godly, there's an essence to it. So the more we invest ourselves in comprehending the subject matter, the essence of the subject matter will impact us on an essential level. There's a passage that says that Hamor Shaba Machzir Lemutav, the light that's within the Torah's teachings will restore a person to goodness. But sometimes if we just accept the outer layer of what we're studying, we're not getting to the essence of it. Right? And the essence is not intellectual. The essence is godly. The essence is spiritual. But when we keep on digging, we keep on pulling away layers, then we get to the essence, and the essence itself restores us to where we need to be. It's why Torah study is so fundamental to Jewish practice. Because the more Torah you study, the more the light of the Torah touches the light of your soul. But you have to invest yourself in it. It doesn't happen passively. Now, we're going to get very, very ethereal here. We're not talking about understanding the essence of the intellectual idea, kim al etzem ha'inyan hamusag, but rather we're working towards the essence of that which is comprehended. In other words, we're not just looking to understand the idea in its true essence, right? An idea has content to it. It has depth, it has breadth, it has length. But the idea is intended to convey something. We're talking about investing ourselves in the intellectual components on it on such a deep level that the messaging that's contained within the idea is what shines for us. Until the idea is fully absorbed by the brain, and he uses Yiddish, es legt sich ab bei ihm der Inyan Eliki sehr gut und sehr rein b'moichei. The matter rests, the godly matter rests fully by the individual, and it is very clean. I don't know how he translates it here. It doesn't translate it exactly, but rein means clean. It's very clean, it's pristine in the person's brain. And then then the light of the intellectual idea shines in the person's brain. Okay, so far we're just talking about the brain. We're intellectually investing in something so much so that we're then able to get the real essence of what's there. You know, sometimes in life you're experiencing something and you suddenly say, I get it now. What are you getting? You're not getting the intellectual idea. You're getting the messaging in the intellectual idea. So usually when we say, I get it now, we're talking on a very personal level. But here, that's the next step. The first step is, I get the idea now. I get the real idea now. And I'm not stuck on the words of the idea. I'm getting the messaging in the idea. And then, from there, it travels from the mind to the heart, that the light becomes ingrained and felt in the person's heart. That is that the heart hears and it feels the intellectual, the godly idea that was comprehended in the mind. That comes about through the component of das, which I'll explain in a moment, which then expands and also comes to the heart. And there in the heart it becomes divided in the categories of kindness and discipline, which is another word for saying love and awe. So it's a very powerful idea. We know that there are three intellectual components: chachma, bina, and das. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. What is knowledge? What does it mean to know something? Anybody want to suggest if you already understand it? So what is knowing?
To really comprehend it on a deeper level.
Okay. Anybody else? What does it mean to know something?
Be certain.
Be certain. So where is that certainty? Where does that certainty live? So the certainty, it's a good word. I like that, certainty. The certainty is not an intellectual idea. It's an experiential idea. In the Torah, the first time we find the word knowledge, it says that Adam knew Eve. Adam yada as Chava. Why does the Torah use the word knowledge, that Adam knew Eve? It wasn't an intellectual experience. It was a very bodily experience, right? Intimacy is a very bodily experience. But it's not just a bodily experience, it's an essential experience. It takes into that experience the entirety of the person. So das, knowledge, the Alter Rebbe uses this language in other places. Das is hergish. It means to feel something. Come on in. Oh, you're just observing. There are bagels if you like. Das is feeling. knowledge. There's a famous story that the Rebbe would often quote at talks, that Aristotle, who would preach on morality, was once caught doing something that was immoral. So they said to him, Aristotle, you preach this stuff. How are you behaving this way? He says, this is not Aristotle. That's Aristotle. Aristotle's the guy in the classroom who preaches the nice preach, but it's not me. It's just an idea, right? So we can have ideas that are depersonalized. They got nothing to do with me. And that lives in the realms of wisdom and understanding. You can truly understand an idea, but it's not about me. As I shared before, you come sometime, I don't know if it's so relevant today, but you go outside of a hospital and you see doctors smoking. They know the dangers of smoking, but it's not about me. It's out there. It's depersonalized, right? So we can study these things. And we say, it's not me. It's a nice idea. I made a comment earlier that when I referenced Haman, that he understood that the Jewish people are a super rational people. Now you hear that, and intellectually that might click for you, but it's not. We're talking about the Jewish people. We're not talking about me, right? We're talking about history, the Jewish people, but that's a nice idea, and maybe it works in the broader world, but it's not me. We're not talking about me. Can you truly feel that you are an individual as a Jew that is not subject to the rules of nature around us? Now we can act accordingly, but do we feel that? Do we really recognize that we are not a rational people? We're not subject to the rules around us. I'm not saying that we have to walk around a whole time in that state of mind, but that's the truth. That's the reality. And if we contemplated this idea on an intellectual level, we studied texts that explain why that is, and we really, really plugged into those texts, and we meditated on it, and we contemplated on it, eventually that idea would permeate into our hearts. And if you remember at the beginning of the discourse, the whole premise was the idea that prayer is about creating transformation in our character. Prayer is the laboratory where we change negative character traits into positive traits. So let's say you're contemplating the idea of, I don't know, let's say selfishness, or on a very general level, the idea that my consciousness puts me first, right? We wake up in the morning, the first thing we're aware of is the self. And then you study about it. You study in Tanya, you study in other texts that the nature of creation is that the divine energy is concealed. And therefore, the body is preoccupied with self. And you can study it at length. But it's not me. I get it. It makes sense. But we're not talking about me. I'm really more of a selfless kind of person. But am I really? Do I walk around with a divine consciousness as my starting point? We just finished studying in the daily portion of the study of Tanya. We studied chapter 32. Chapter 32 is Leiv, which means the heart of Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe there says that when one puts their body first, then it's impossible to love another person. Because the nature of the body is to be preoccupied with self. And you're always going to put yourself first when your body is your primary consciousness. But when one puts their soul first, when one gets to a place through contemplation and meditation, and you need to study 31 chapters of Tanya to get the intellectual ideas first. And then if you meditate on it, then you're able to elevate your soul, your true essence, over your bodily consciousness. And then you can truly come to a place where you love another person. Because when you look at another person, you see their soul as well. But in order to get there, you have to first understand the ideas behind it, literally study the material. Then you need to meditate on it to absorb intellectually the messaging. And then it can move from the brain into the heart. And when it moves into the heart, then the heart kicks in. And the heart generally has two components, love and awe, love and fear, which you might say is attraction and rejection, connection and disconnection. In other words, there are things in the world that we want to be connected to, and there are things in the world that we know we ought to be disconnected from. We shouldn't be preoccupied with indulgences. We should be preoccupied with connection, with purpose and meaning and the true essence of people. Relationships are difficult. Why are relationships difficult? Especially meaningful relationships are difficult.
So many variables, different people and personality.
So where does all that live? That's not the soul, that's the body.
In the animal.
It lives in the animal body. That's all external stuff. So as long as we are trying to connect with another on an external level, we might find certain synergies, the laws of attraction. But then once the honeymoon is over, then the other things start kicking in. And then we see suddenly that we're bumping up against things that we don't meld so nicely. And then you have to start really doing the work, which is, why am I really connected to this person? Not because of all these external layers. I mean, if that's all there is at the end of the day, it's not going to be a relationship that's going to last. Relationships that last are relationships that are connected on a deeper level. So in that experience, you have to incorporate love and fear, or love and respect, love and awe. That there are certain things about you that I naturally connect with. There are certain things that I naturally disconnect from. But because there's a deeper layer in this relationship, so I'm going to connect on a deeper relationship with those parts of who you are. Yes.
With life, if Bina, Chokmah are on the top, and you have that in the middle, Hesed and Gevurah. Why is it in the center? Like, why is that in the middle? Like, can we, like, for analogy, is like, if love is Hesed and fear is Gevurah, then awe is the next level, like in the middle.
Good. So you're asking a good question, but let me clarify first how the sephiros work. You have Chachma is on the right, Bina is on the left, wisdom on the right, understanding on the left. And in the center you have Das. Then you have Chesed on the right, kindness on the right, Gevurah on the left, and in the center you have Tiferes, which is harmony or beauty. So the nature of Chesed is to be connected to something. The nature of Chachma is connection. Innovation is where somebody brings themselves to the experience. The job of understanding, the job of Bina, is to dissect, right? If you just stick with innovation, you're never going to be able to actualize that. Innovation requires that we say, that idea doesn't work in this case. That idea doesn't work in this case. So what's left? This is what's left. When you bring innovation and you bring the dissection that comes through Bina, through understanding, then you have a product. The product is the outcome. So in intellectual ideas, we get the spark of an idea, we develop the idea by dissecting it, and then once we've got that all organized, then we can actually feel the experience of what the idea is trying to tell us. And the same thing is true with Chesed and Gevurah. Chesed is one element. That's in the relationships, it's where do I connect with this person? Gevurah is where do I disconnect from this person? And Tiferes is bringing together an understanding that even though I connect and I disconnect, there's something deeper that transcends both of them. And that's where true relationships live. So Das, knowledge, the feeling of the connection, then births the emotional relationship on that harmonious level. And that's exactly the word. When you want to live in harmony, you can't live in either extreme, because there's always going to be things you like and things you don't like. And that's not where relationships are successful. Relationships are successful when we bring those two components together and find an essential connection that brings together both the things we like and we don't like.
Well, I mean, that's, maybe I'm saying something that's out there, but when I hear you talk, it's like you're created, most people are created opposite the way they're supposed to be. Meaning that you have to spoil big time to do proper what you're saying. Is that because you're supposed to have a choice? And I don't understand, like, if this is what you're supposed to do. But yeah, even though we're in a hard way, we're hardwired that way, but it's not connected that way. It's arisen. Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to work. What you're saying, basically, right?
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
to toil to get to the, see, you know, that way. It's just, I don't know. So what? I mean,
Seems unfair.
well, not unfair, but it's like, if this way it's supposed to be, we're playing games here. I mean, what is the point
So
to be there?
maybe present company excluded, i.e. you, but if you've ever had a good fight with your wife and
Good one.
a good one. A bad one is one that nothing comes out of it. A good one is where good stuff comes out of it. Was the emphasis on good or one? But anyway, and then you work through what it is that you were disagreeing about, that you were fighting about. And what you discover is something about your wife and something about yourself. The connection that comes as a result of that is far more powerful than the connection you had before. When we work for something, we feel much more connected to it. There's an existential question. Why did God create this in the first place? Yeah, so I can't answer that question because I'm not God, but I can tell you what the mechanism is. Huh? Close enough. Thank you. Very kind of you. But the truth is that all of us are close enough if we're willing to lean into it. But why it is that way, we don't know, but we know what the mechanism is. The mechanism is that God created night before day, and it was evening and it was day. Darkness always comes before light. On a human level, we can say we don't appreciate it without going through the darkness. But what really is going on is that God created the world because he wanted to enter into a relationship with us. And in order for there to be a relationship with us, there has to be an us. There has to be a self-consciousness. And then within that self-consciousness, we have to realize that the true essence of who we are is God. And the true essence of the person that we're in a relationship with is godly. And therefore, we navigate through the darkness, through the challenge to get to that connection. And it's true in relationships, it's true in everything in life, right? What's gonna get a person to get healthy? When they realize that life is more than eating this steak. Life is more than enjoying the coffee. There's something more there. It's more than just sitting on the couch and watching a TV show. Life is profound, but if I'm not going to be healthy, I'm not going to be able to experience it. But the reality is you're not going to get there until you eat the cake and eat the steak and drink the coffee and suddenly find yourself overweight and sluggish and not feeling good. And some people don't fight the fight at that point. They surrender. And when they surrender, they go downhill. And relationships end that way because people are stuck on themselves and we're in this relationship, we're bumping up against something. But we know, both from the Torah's standpoint and we know from modern psychology, that people come and they complain, they come to a therapist's office and they complain about their spouse. My husband's this, my wife is this. He says, you have to ask one question. Why did you choose them? Why did you choose your spouse? If your spouse is, so you say, I got snookered. I didn't really know who they were. That's not really the story. You chose your spouse because there's something about your spouse that you need to be married to in order to correct something about yourself. And when you're willing to recognize that, then you start correcting that thing within yourself and you move away from judgment of the spouse and you start healing that part of you that needs correction. And then you show up in a relationship like a different person. Yeah, it's tough. But ultimately, it's all about this journey of peeling away the layers of the self-consciousness and trying to get to the essence in everything in life, in every experience. I mean, you can see what's going on in the world today. My wife texted me this morning about a friend of hers who is posting on Facebook that Israel is a puppet of the U.S. I'm sorry, the U.S. is a puppet of Israel, and that Israel intentionally targeted a girls' school in Iran to kill all these girls. It's so nonsense, right? But people will believe whatever they want to believe to validate the things that prevent them from looking at the true essence of who they are. All of our political views, all of our world perspectives are all essentially about this. It's what it boils down to. It's easy to say, oh, that person is pro-Trump or against Trump because they truly believe that Trump is this or Trump is that. But it's something inside of them that is justifying. It's a self-validating experience that then causes them to be obsessed one way or the other. And it's true about any obsession. If you're obsessed with anything, preoccupied with anything other than God and purpose and meaning, it's just a facade. Whether you're preoccupied with work, whether you're preoccupied with a particular intellectual approach, whether you're preoccupied with exercise or drugs or alcohol, it's all a facade helping us escape from looking at the true self. Because if we look at the true self, it's going to make demands on us to make real changes in our lives. And what's the self? The self is the godly part of who we are. So the whole body, the whole human experience is there just to challenge us to dig deeper. But the real transformation takes place when the light goes on. When suddenly the mirror is in front of us and it's very clear and we can't deny it anymore. But that doesn't happen overnight. People work years and years to get to that understanding of self. That's what das is. That's what knowledge is. It's a feeling. It's an experience. And when the light goes on, like the whole world suddenly becomes brighter. You've been living in a darkness until now, and then boom, whoa. Oh, that's what's really been going on. Right? Like I like the analogy of the old TV sets where you're fiddling around with the hanger on the back of the TV, and then suddenly the picture becomes clear. Right? That's our lives. Our lives are dealing with static, and we think the static is the picture. And then wait, no, this is the picture. No, that's not the picture. This is the picture. And we keep on adjusting until suddenly, the picture has now become clear. And by the way, the reality is that as long as we're alive, there'll be yet a clearer picture. As long as we remain invested, there'll be another clearer picture. But unless we're going to, so even what we're talking about here, we have to pray every day, because every day that we pray, the picture becomes clearer. The more we do this work, the more the picture becomes clearer. But we have to invest ourselves in it. And what the Rebbe is telling us here is how to invest ourselves in it. First, we have to understand the subject matter. Just before we even get into the contemplation of the subject, we literally need to understand what it is that we're reading. Then we have to deeply contemplate, review the subject matter, and then try to extrapolate from the subject matter the messaging in the subject matter. And then it moves from the head into the heart, and it becomes personal. And we begin to feel the subject matter. We feel it with love, and we feel it with respect. We feel it with love, we feel it with awe. The second paragraph, 51. When the godly idea is illuminated in the person's brain, so then intellectually we become excited, we become moved about the godliness. In other words, we have an intellectual excitement. Whether it's with love or with awe, depending on the person's level of comprehension. So a very fascinating idea he tells us here. First, I just want to mention, if you remember, I think we did it on this course, I quote, and I can do it at the end of the class as well, that we referenced the passage from the Rebbe's book, Hayom Yom, that talks about 3 levels of meditation, right? There's meditating on the intellectual idea, meditating on the godly energy in the intellectual idea, and then meditating on the personal experience within that godly idea or the godly light. So generally we think about emotions living in the heart. But do you know that we have emotions in the brain as well? Where do we have emotions in our brain? So everybody sitting around this table is processing this information. And some are processing it critically, and some are processing it in a manner of connection. If we're processing it in a manner of connection, like, oh, that's great, that's a great idea, it's fascinating, I want to learn more. If that's the energy that you're experiencing, so that's an experience of love. That's an experience, that's an emotional connection of ahava, of love. If your experience is one of, okay, but the rabbi's teaching this, but I remember studying something else that seems to contradict this, or that seems to parallel this, you're thinking about it critically. You're thinking about something critically, you're already beginning to dissect. That comes from the emotional attribute of gevura, of discipline. So the fact that we're thinking about it critically means that we have a dominant emotion in our brain that's wired towards gevura, right? And we know people like this. We know people who the way they think is expansive, and we know people who think critically. And they're both legitimate. It's not one is better than the other. But we have to understand that we are wired a certain way in our brains, and we have to utilize the wiring and also incorporate the other wiring. In other words, if we are wired critically, we also have to bring in a wiring of expansiveness. And if we're wired expansive, we also have to use our brain to think critically.
Could those two things run concurrently, Ahava and Gevura? Or are you just talking about two different people types generally?
No, I think, yes, in general, but I think we each have to incorporate both of those into a thought process. Whether they can operate at the same moment, I don't know.
Okay.
But we have to give each of them a turn. Because then we're not doing the intellectual idea justice. It's like, if we take it back to the heart, right? If a person only exists in their relationships in an expansive way, which is wonderful, they're not going to really grow, or they're not going to fully grow. I'll put it this way. In the experience in a relationship, right? A spouse says, you bump up against something with your spouse, and you say, you know what, she's right, he's right. I have that thing inside of me that I need to adjust. So you have an openness, you have an expansiveness to making that change. But just because you're bumping up against that particular issue, it doesn't mean that it's entirely correct. Or even if it's entirely correct, it's not the whole picture. So we have to incorporate the other components of it. Humility is important, but honest humility requires critical thinking. That is emotional excitement in the brain, which is an intellectual excitement. Intellectual excitement still is depersonalized. You can get excited about an intellectual idea, but it's not about me. It's a great idea. I love that idea, but it's not talking about me. So then, and then the heart is drawn after the brain. Because the brain has the capacity, the nature of the intellect is that it draws the heart after it. And if you see in parentheses, he says, V'hu b'chinas hadas. What is the component of the brain that draws the heart? That the das brain, the knowledge brain, it is a brain, but it's a brain that's not preoccupied with intellectual ideas. It's a brain that's preoccupied with personalization. So, but it's somewhat of a bridge, right? Because it lives in the space of the intellect, but its whole agenda is personalization, right? The brain, the nature of the brain is to be disconnected. We're thinking about something. So even the Das brain, the knowledge brain, is thinking about it, but that knowledge brain then brings the heart into it. The whole experience of the heart is about personalization. The heart wants to feel. It wants to feel connected or wants to feel disconnected. It wants to feel excitement or it wants to feel fear. So whatever it is that the heart wants to experience is all about the self. That's why we can't go just with the heart, because the heart is susceptible to the self-preoccupation. Conversely, the brain is preoccupied with disconnect. So we can't go just with the brain either. Because if we go just with the brain, it's never going to be about me. So the bridge between the brain and the heart is the Das brain, the knowledge brain, which has both an intellectual component and also a personalization component. It draws the heart, that the heart should also be moved by the arousal of the mind. Let's pause for a moment so I can take a sip of coffee and breathe. Yeah. I could walk and chew gum at the same time. Go ahead.
Listen, I almost like I'm getting off course here, but on a practical level, most people bump with their spouse or their child or very good friend when, let's say, I like to watch football and my spouse wants to go shopping. You know, whatever. That's not where it's like they don't have the same drives. The two people don't have the same drives. One of them is, or my son likes to hunt, and I'm like, you kidding me? No practical stuff. So, in order to sustain a relationship, does that mean on a personal level you have to subdue your thought, your how you're created to continue that way so the person does something differently? Example, some person likes to hunt and like, yeah, but kidding me, you kill a deer, whatever, yeah. So in order to keep a relationship with my son, I said, it's not for me, but I listen to the stories. So is that in that example? I'm just trying to say that's just an example. Because everybody's bumping when you're bumping,
Sure.
because you're created differently, mainly, right? There's two. So is it about just subduing your nature or what?
Good. It's a great question. So I want to qualify this, because subduing is a discounting, and it might be a good first step, but that's not really the depth of a relationship. Let me approach it from a different angle. In the verse says, "Osa shalom bimromav," he who makes peace on high, hu yasa shalom aleinu, he should make peace for us, v'akol Yisrael, and for all of Israel. So where is God making peace on high? So it says that there's an angel of fire and an angel of water, and they don't get along with each other because one is fire, one is water. So in order to bring peace between the angel of water and the angel of fire, you need a power that's greater than the angel of fire and the angel of water. So if peace is about subduing, then one of them has to disappear. Either the fire has to put out the water, or the water has to put out the fire. Where did God make peace between the angel of fire and the angel of water? Who knows? Fred?
And they stand together before the heavenly throne.
But where did God actually do it? Where did God actually make fire and water coexist?
In a plague.
Which one? Which one?
7.
Hail. Yeah. So the plague of hail.
Which number?
Good. In the plague of hail, the Torah tells us the plague of hail that came down on the Egyptians, it says that the hail came down, but inside the hail was fire. So when it hit the ground, it created fire, it burned up the crops, burned up the people, whatever it burned up. You have fire and water that are functioning together. The fire doesn't evaporate the water, and the water doesn't put out the fire. So what's the messaging there is that I don't have to cease to exist. I don't have to subdue myself in order to be in this relationship. So I'll give you a parallel to this. When two people have conflict, right? So in mediation, right? A good mediator, what does a good mediator do? A good mediator says, okay, what's your take? What's your take? Right? And what a good mediator does is they try to lower the temperature. And they say, okay, let's see what's your position here. I'm actually working with two rabbis that have a conflict right now. I mentioned this last week, and the temperatures are like way up here. And one of them in particular is carrying a lot of anger and resentment. And I told him from the beginning, I said, if you're going to try to move forward carrying around your resentment and your anger, you're not going to move forward. You're going to be stuck in the past. So in order to move forward, you have to realize that life is life. You have a perspective, he has a perspective. And the question on the table is, do you want to move forward? If you want to move forward, we can find a way to move forward. If you want to be stuck on the past, you're not going to move forward. So he was struggling with it, and I got advice from someone that said, just there was a proposal that was put in front of you. I want you to redline the proposal, but no history in your redlining. Just this is what's on the table. Redline what you don't agree with, and show me what you do agree with, right? It's starting to work slowly. Why? Because what the person's realizing is, like, I can't move forward if I'm carrying around this other stuff. Let's see where we align, and then we're going to delineate. We agree everything here except for this. Okay, now that I see that I'm getting validated in all these places, maybe I'll be able to suck up the parts that hurt. Right? That's how we approach conflict resolution. That's not true peace. Why? Because what you're doing in that experiencing is you're subduing a part of yourself, right? So the reality is that we can't always get to a place where we can truly be at peace, but we have to coexist. So that's the end game. That's on a professional level. On a personal level, in a relationship, you don't want to be waking up every morning and saying, my whole life is defined by what I'm subjugating to my spouse. You're not alive in the relationship then. Now, again, it might be an important first step, because the first thing we have to do is actually humble the ego a little bit, right? But the goal is to come to a place to say, I might be fire and she might be water, but we can coexist, and we can be connected. We can actually live in peace with each other, because I'm not water, but I recognize that she's water. Meaning the true harmony is when I can say, I'm different. I don't want the same things you want, but I appreciate that you want them. And I can bring myself to a place of appreciation that I want to do what you want.
Well, accepting instead of doing it, it's different words.
Say that again.
What you're saying, I'm very right, more accepting instead of doing.
Yes, but it's all the difference. It's all the difference. It's all the difference, right? People can be married for decades and they're miserable in their marriages because what they've been doing is they're constantly putting themselves second in order to show up for the other. But you don't have to do that. You have to just open your heart and see the other. So you want to watch a football game. Your wife wants to go shopping. Great. So if you're going to be preoccupied with self, then you're going to say, I don't care what she wants. I want to watch a football game. But if you can make it not about yourself and say, I love my wife and I want her to be happy, and I know this makes her happy. Yes, I want to watch the football game. I'll watch the reruns. But what's important to me, what's really important to me? Is it really important to me that I watch the football game? Or is it really important to me, not that my wife wants to go shopping? Listen to the distinction. If I say, I really want to watch the football game, but my wife really wants to go shopping and I want my wife to be happy, so therefore I'm going to go shopping with her. So you're subjugating yourself. But if I say, I really want to watch a football game and my wife really wants to go shopping, and I want my wife to be happy. And I don't understand why it makes her happy to go shopping, but I truly want my wife's happiness, that's the dominant for me, then I'm no longer preoccupied with figuring out how to give up my football game, because I'm preoccupied with making her happy. Now, why do I want to make her happy? Because we're connected on an essential level. When it comes to that steak, I really want to eat the steak. But what do I want more than eating the steak is to be healthy. So I'm not torturing myself by not eating the steak. I'm actually not eating the steak as a positive step in being healthy. I want to do this particular sin, but more than wanting to do the sin, I want to be connected with God. So not doing the sin, it makes me connected to God. So it may be that I'm not doing something, but I'm not doing the something in the action of getting connected to God. By the way, the negative commandments actually demonstrate the negative commandments are spiritually higher than the positive commandments. Because the way you show your relationship to God is by not doing something. Who's not doing it? The body's not doing it. Who's fulfilling the commandment? Who's doing the positive action of not doing? That's the soul. The soul says, I want to be connected to God, and the way I'm going to be connected to God is by not doing what the body wants. So the question is, what's dominating? What energy is dominating? Is the energy of subjugation dominating? Or is this the energy of being connected to God dominating?
Big picture. The big picture is driving your action. The big picture of the situation.
But the big picture has to come into your essence.
Thought process is that you have to look at the big picture. That's the big picture.
I would frame it different than the big picture. I would frame it, what is the essence of what I want? See, even changing the framing of it changes the experience of it. The big picture is out there. The essence of it is in here. If it's a big picture, then you say, okay, I'm gonna forego the football game because I want to make my wife happy. It's a different form of subjugating. But if I say, what's in here? What's my true desire? What's my true desire? I want to watch football, but what do I really want? I really want my wife to be happy. I'll give you another context, which we've spoken about, I think, already in this discourse, is when it comes to how we look at our shortcomings. I mentioned this also yesterday, is that when it comes to our shortcomings, we have a lot of judgment around the self. Why do we get defensive? We get defensive because we have a lot of shame around the fact that I'm not perfect. So when somebody says to me, you did such and such, my first reaction is to protect myself, protect my hangups. Why? Because if you think that I have this shortcoming, then I'm broken. And if I'm broken, then I carry shame around that. Why am I broken? So I have to fight with myself. Even within myself, I'm fighting with myself about my shortcomings. So every time this negative character trait shows up, I go to a place of, I'm bad, I'm broken. And if I'm bad and I'm broken, then I'm at war with myself. But if I can say, I'm not bad, I'm not broken, but this is how God created me because this is where God wants me to do my work. So the bad and broken now become part of my journey in serving God. The battle is over. I'll give you one other parallel. I also mentioned it already in this discourse, is the idea that in the book of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that the mind, by its nature, controls the heart. So what does it mean the mind controls the heart? It means that if the heart wants something, the mind has control over that. So the way we usually think of that, actually, I'm curious, when you hear the mind controls the heart, what does that mean? What does that mean to you?
Your decisions, in your head decide how you feel inside.
Okay, good. You're on the money today. So what does that mean in the experience? I'm angry at my friend. I want to hurt them. I want to do something. We say the mind controls the heart. So what does that mean? What does that mean the mind controls the heart in that experience?
I had interpreted it slightly different. I like your interpretation, but the way I saw it was that the mind ultimately makes the decision as to what action comes out of it. Because in my own experience, heart has definitely overpowered mind, but a lack of focus, a lack of discipline, or a lack of self-control, which is the mind's purview, is the reason for that happening. But if you were to make the extraordinary effort through the mind, then the mind ultimately has control.
Okay, so I was hoping you were going to answer that because that's the default setting without the teachings of Hasidus and other approaches that we usually wire ourselves for. So we say to ourselves, I have the capacity to be in control, right? So even though I'm angry at this person and I want to shoot my mouth off at them, I have the ability to control my heart not to act on that way. The mind is higher than the heart, and it can control it. The problem with that is you're going to win sometimes, you're going to lose sometimes, and you're going to go to a place of judgment. And that's a war. That's a battle.
Yeah.
Right? To stop your heart from doing what the heart wants is a battle. But the mind controlling the heart means something. And actually, the Hebrew words are the mind rules the heart. It's like you said, the real journey is to talk to your heart. Why is it that you want to do this? Why are you angry? What's going on for you? And if you can have that conversation with your heart, then the mind can convince the heart.
So it's rationalization between the two.
Well, that's the job of the mind.
Yeah.
But because the heart is such an emotional creature, it's difficult to do that, which is why we default to mind controlling the heart. You're not going to do what you want to do because I'm in charge here. Right? But that's not the ideal. The ideal is the mind talks to the heart and says, I understand you want to do this. I feel for you. That person did something that was real nasty. They were insensitive. They insulted you. They hurt you. They took your money. They damaged your property, whatever it is. Real. That's a legitimate story. And I validate your emotions. But you can be more than that. You don't have. So what's the difference? Whether I'm going to approach it with saying, I'm not going to let you do this, or let's have a conversation. The question is, do you see yourself as broken? That there's a mistake here, which then leads to shame, which therefore leads to this need to battle it? Or do you see that as the way God created you with purpose and intentionality to begin to journey to create transformation? When a kid throws a tantrum, do you see the kid as broken, or do you see the kid as a kid? If you see the kid as broken, you got to discipline them. If you see the kid as a kid, you get down and you hug them. It doesn't mean that you say you can do whatever you want just because you're a kid. But the way you approach the kid is with embrace. You understand the kid's hurting. You give them a hug. You help calm them down. But if you see the kid as broken, you say, I got to whip him into shape. Otherwise, he's going to turn into a monster. So how do we look at ourselves? So if we bring this back to the relationship, am I subjugating myself? Is it a big picture? I want my wife to be happy, so therefore I'm going to keep the peace. But what do I really want? I really want to watch the football game. But because it's the better of the two, because it'll be more peaceful, so therefore I'm gonna give in. Or do I say, what is it that I really want? What lies at the essence of who I am? And if I can lean into that, what is the essence of who I am? What do I really want in my essence? Then I can actually show up from the inside in a different way.
You're not looking into the book, looking at yourself.
Yes, yes, the work always is inside of ourselves.
So somebody accuses you of something, right? So you can either tell yourself, your mind can take, because everything starts in your emotions. If that happens, your emotions start.
They flare up.
Right.
Protectors show up. Yeah.
So that time, and that's what you're saying. If your mind takes control and says, "Well, I just don't agree. I'm not going to respond."
Or
Or
first of all, by the way, no,
I'm trying to understand this with that kind of.
no. It's a good example because if you're in my understanding, if you're subjugating yourself, then you're going to say the accusation is wrong, but because I want to keep the peace and I want my wife to be happy, so therefore I'm not going to respond. But if you pause and you say, what am I experiencing right now? Somebody accused me of something that I didn't do. Okay. And therefore what? So what? What is that doing for you? Why are you getting so self-protective about that?
It depends on the environment.
Okay, good. But so what's the experience inside yourself? It's actually very important because the experience inside yourself is going to change on the environment because it's the same accusation. But in one case you get triggered, in the other case you don't. So this is all about you. It's not about the blame. It's not about the accusation. Right? The homeless person on the street says something nasty to you, you just keep on walking. Most people. Some people get triggered from that. So it's not about the event, it's what's going on inside of yourself. So when you can process that and say, I just got accused falsely, and that's really activating me. Why is it activating me? Because I have a certain notion of how I'm supposed to be. And this person is misreading who I'm supposed to be. So it's not about them, it's about me. Why do I have a problem with the fact that I might not be the person that person thinks I'm supposed to be? Am I okay knowing that I am who I really am and that they've got it wrong? Now, you may respond, but the response is going to be, I'm not saying that you should never respond to a false accusation, but the way you respond is going to be entirely different if you are preoccupied with self or if you are accepting of self. Because when you're accepting of self, I'll give you an example. Your wife says, you told me you were going to be home at this time and now it's an hour later. So if you're protecting yourself, you're going to say, no, you didn't hear me correctly. You didn't know what I was saying. You misunderstood. But if you can go to that place of self and you say, I'm okay, even if she misunderstood me, but right now she's upset. And what do I want in my essence is for her happiness. Then your response might be something like, oh, I'm so sorry that you thought I was going to be home before. I didn't want you to think that I didn't want you to think that I'm disregarding you. It's the last thing I want is for you to think that I'm disregarding you. I'm so sorry there was a misunderstanding here. Right? It's not about me anymore. It's not about my body. It's about essence. I want to be connected. So if it's about me, then I got to protect myself. If it's about essence, then I can say, she's upset. Who cares what she's upset about? She's upset. I don't want her to be upset. So I'm going to show up with the true self. I'm not going to accept the blame, but who cares about the blame? Right now she's hurting. That's what's important. I want to show up with a sensitivity towards that. So it's getting away from the battle and to creating more synergy. Okay, we're way over time. To be continued. All right, again, Purim, Monday night, Tuesday, late afternoon. Please join us. We're going to have a great time.